Étoile or Étoile. I don't know how you are to pronounce this title, but hey, this is the new series streaming on Prime Video right now. It is from creators Amy Sherman Palladino and Daniel Palladino. I think they were one of the early adopters of the signing an exclusive deal with a streaming service, and now they can just make what they want. Perhaps their biggest success that you've seen on Amazon Prime at this point is The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which is a show I really enjoy. I've talked about it numerous times on this channel. So much fun. I think that's one of the perfect shows for streaming, and it was just kind of like in a weird vacuum of time when like we could make something like that. But I guess they're back now, and they're taking a few of the supporting cast members from Marvelous Mrs. Maisel over here to make a new thing. In particular, Luke Kirby, who seemed like a really interesting find for the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. He played Lenny Bruce, this neurotic, weird comedian who was so specific in tone and experience. Probably one of the characters that a lot of people were like, I want to see more of that. I think you could actually tell a Lenny Bruce story here. Well, what if we take that actor who had those neuroses in him and this really interesting style to being in the 50s and 60s, and we moved him over to modern day New York where he runs a ballet institution. I had no idea that this show was coming out. I saw a couple of marketing promotions for it, not a whole bunch, but I knew Luke Kirby was starring in a new show on Prime, and that was enough to get me interested in seeing what it is. I didn't know it was the Palladinos that were working on this, and wow, this was certainly a show that came out, isn't it? All 8 episodes of the first season have dropped. According to IMDb, I didn't really look into this more, but it seems like it was a 2-season deal for the Palladinos to make this show. So there's a potential another 8 episodes coming out at some point. It's wild in a really specific way, and that's not me saying this is bad. It's more of like a choice was made when this was created, and you don't really see that anymore. This is a very specific show. And one of the things it is doing is just taking a really high concept premise and seeing how far they can get with that. It's not very far. This is a comedy series about ballet. We are following 2 of the major institutions of ballet throughout the world, the New York branch and the Paris branch. Due to complications from multiple events, just a loss of funding the arts, COVID, people not really interested in ballet, both of these houses decide it's time to do something revolutionary, so they're going to swap company players. So people who are based in New York are going to go to Paris, and people from Paris are going to come to New York. That's the premise of this show. That's the initial conceit of this show. So from New York, we're going to send a couple of our better talents. We're going to send one of our choreographers, played by Gideon Glick, another person who is from Maisel, and another find from the Palladinos they want to keep working with. So he's like this neurotic, weird guy who's going to go over to Paris and do stuff there. Coming from Paris is going to be Cheyenne. She is like the greatest ballerina to date or something. She's like the modern wonder that you come to see. She's going to return to New York to have a new show or something start up. That's the premise. And on either side of these worlds, you have Luke Kirby, who runs the institution in New York, and then you have Charlotte Gainsbourg, who runs it in Paris. So we spend a lot of time focusing on their characters as like the business end of running a ballet institution, or I don't even think it's called a ballet institution. They're running like a big ballet house, you know? That's a very weird premise. Like, if you were to force me at gunpoint to come up with a premise for a ballet comedy, that's not what I'd come up with. But hey, that's why I'm not one of the Palladinos. It's so specific in tone, and I wonder if it's just like the comedy that I think this duo is really good at writing and creating just doesn't feel like it belongs in 2025. The very stark digital lighting and the way everything just looks modern and everyone's on a cell phone, it feels very weird and doesn't perfectly work with like the comedy angle that we're going for in this. it just has some specific tones that feel out of place in today. That's not to say the comedy doesn't always work. There are a couple good jokes in there. Like, you get the fast-paced quipping that this type of creative team is accustomed to. It's just not at its fullest strength. I genuinely like this show a lot. Like, it intrigued me enough. I think any show that focuses on a very specific section of the arts is really interesting. And then because of that, you have to portray those arts in a very specific way, which is kind of the weird dichotomy of this show, is how it wants to kind of like make fun of running a ballet studio, but then it takes 10 minutes each episode to show you like how important it is that ballet is an art form. Your characters are like making weird jokes about the stuff they have to do, but then suddenly here's a good ballet recital where like professional dancers come on stage and actually rehearse proper ballet, both famous pieces throughout the history of the art form and new modern compositions that we're just creating on the spot. It's a weird choice. I understand the need to do it because I think if you are just going to talk about ballet and not show us ballet, it would also feel weird. That's more of like the classic sitcom thing. Like, if this was a sitcom in the 70s or 80s or 90s, it would just be about these like weird New York guys running a ballet studio. We would never have like the presentation of the arts, but because it's streaming and modern times, we're trying to make this longer. This could be boiled down to a pretty interesting half-hour comedy. But because we're doing this longer format and it's more of like a dramedy thing, it doesn't stick the landing as much. But cut out all the other fat. You know, you can trim a lot of this and get something solid going here. There's a really interesting foundation to be built upon this stuff. I think a lot of the actual sets we're filming on are really impressive. Big, sweeping buildings, huge rooms that are decorated to the nines. We're filming on stages because we are doing ballet. We have to do stuff on stages. And those stages look practical and real. Like, I don't know where specifically they filmed a lot of this stuff, considering half of it's in New York, half of it's in Paris. Another weird choice to take both halves of that. That just expands the cast to another, like, whole other cast over here. That doesn't matter. They must have got some pretty good deals to film in real places, because there's people in real places. You know, it's interesting. I'm sure you could like rent out a hall at like one of the big metropolitan whatevers. I'm sure you could. I don't know if they did, but that's what I would assume would happen with something like that. And we're outside of New York quite a bit, and we're in Paris or filming somewhere in Europe, so it looks pretty good. It's just amazing that this was the choice that you went for. Like, this was the direction for stuff, because it's not the smartest show, and I think that's a criticism that's very valid, especially when we're talking about, like, Amy Sherman Palladino. She is known for her wit and her humor and making something that's really elegant and crazy. When it's ballet, that's the premise. And when it doesn't feel the most elegant of the stuff you've made, ooh, that's kind of weird, isn't it? Really weird balance. The cast is really interesting too. Like, there's a lot of names here I don't really know much about. Like, we have, I'm sorry if I pronounce her name wrong, it's Lou DeLange, who is playing Cheyenne. She is like the most important ballerina in the world. She's also like a really big environmental activist. And she's just a really fascinating character who's like, I don't want to be positioned in ways people are trying to control me, but I also know the only way I could get stuff across is through my dance. So she goes on a really interesting arc of like learning what she wants to do, who she wants to do stuff with. It works for the most part. I don't know that actress too well. If she's a professional dancer and that's like her primary thing, I would 100% see that. But if she's just like a French find who was able to speak English and do some good stuff here, she's really talented. She's probably the most interesting character to follow just because she's the most sure of everything, and it's interesting to see her interact with the world. Not a lot of comedy from her. She's more like the witty, dry one. And a lot of the comedy surprisingly comes from Charlotte Gainsbourg, which I think is very specific in tone. She takes her shoes off a lot in this show, and I don't understand what the point of that was. I think it's just more like a grounding herself thing. She runs the Paris Institution, so it's more like comical and farce over there, not really understanding stuff. And uh-oh, we had a bull on stage in a sequence, and now this bull's really popular, and that kind of stuff. It is fascinating, the stuff she gets to do, because it goes back to what I was just saying. Like, there's both, I love ballet more than anything, but it's like, oh, ballet is so exhausting. And they make all like the side characters who are like the dancers and performers, they're all very interesting. This is a show with a lot of like pretty people in it, which is, I think, kind of like accustomed to like the Palladino style. But man, not a lot of like just faces. It's a lot of just pretty faces, but not distinctive faces. And I think that's for everyone. There's interesting characters in here. Like you have Simon Callow in here, and I'm like, that's an interesting face. And who's the other guy? I think it's David Haig is also in this. Like, that's an interesting face. You got two old veterans in here doing some interesting stuff. They're like the only people I wouldn't classify as like perfectly pretty, but they're not like faces where you're like, that's interesting. I don't know. And Luke Kirby, I've kind of been waiting for him to blow up. I think he is so specific, a character actor, and has a really unique vibe. His accent and the way he speaks and presents in every project that he's done with the Palladinos now does not present like a guy that would be running a ballet studio. He has such a tired energy to him, and that's kind of interesting for a lead in something like this. It's a shame you just don't fully connect with that character. I still like it. I think it's very interesting what he does and how he has to handle things. He's still cool. Like, he's still personally on my short list of who should have been Reed Richards. He has that look of like a guy who is just feeling the weight of everything on his shoulders, but still just comfortable and cocky enough to know that maybe he's right. That doesn't perfectly work for everything we're setting up in this narrative. So there is a little bit of like hit and miss in that aspect too. I don't know. I like seeing him, so I'm not against it. Gideon Glick's another one where I'm like, this guy, he's a good find. I like him. Very specific performer as well, which does work for the tempo of this show. The thing is that this show is just so specific and not specific enough at the same time. I don't know. Like, it doesn't feel like relatable problems that is going to make everybody feel connected to it. And that's okay. I mean, that worked for Succession, so it should kind of work over here. But I think there's a little more like relatable and approachability to like Gilmore Girls and Mrs. Maisel than there is to something like this. So that's going to be off-putting. Saying all that, I smiled a lot throughout the piece. There's some really enjoyable moments. It's cool to see like this world get some light shined on it, even if it's like kind of through like a farcical lens. It's really smiley and enjoyable sometimes. It's meddling, it's like this is gonna vary depending on what you can get from it. And what I get from it is, well, this is a fine attempt. I feel like they could retool some stuff in the second season if we actually get to see that. So, Étoile or Étoile, I don't know how you'd pronounce it, I'm sorry. I know it's like the French word for like star or famous person. I should have looked up how to say it, but whatever. Étoile, I am going to give a 6 out of 10. Now, thank you all for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And of course, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.